Well, this is a little different setting for a video. You can tell I'm sitting here by my fire. The lights are out. We've got a pretty strong wind today, so evidently something blew down. We've been without power for about a half hour, so I've been kind of twiddling my thumbs deciding what am I going to do. I've been sanding on these wheels. I have all 4 of them done. They're ready to go into the paint room. But I would like to put them in that heated room for about a day and let them acclimate temperature-wise before I paint them. So I had kind of planned on sanding on the front and rear axle while I visited with you today some. But you know, if you like to go camping, or if you've ever gone camping, sitting around the campfire is really a pleasant time to visit and tell stories. You know, there was a while back that somebody sent me a picture of a little car, and I think maybe it was a Dodge Colt or something. I can't really tell from the picture. But there's a big bull elk mounted on the top of this little car, and you can see a couple guys in there, and I'll show it to you here. But that just came back to mind as I was sanding, and so it got me to thinking about hunting, and I used to do a fair bit of it. Well, October to November is hunting season here in Montana, and it ends up usually about the weekend of Thanksgiving. In my day, I used to do quite a little bit of it, and most of it was horseback. I've done some backpack hunting, but Rick Bischoff, that you have met with the Luminary Shop, who's my brother-in-law, he and I and a third friend, Richard, had enough gear, horses, saddles, pack saddles, mules, that we became kind of the 3 musketeers, and we went hunting every year. About September 15th, the backcountry in the wilderness just north of Yellowstone Park, in the combination of Absaroka Mountains and the Beartooth Mountains, known as, surprisingly enough, Absaroka-Beartooth Wilderness, it opened up for early pre-season rifle season for elk. So we had first initially planned on going in 1988, but that was the year that Yellowstone Park burned up, so we got delayed and we started going in 1989. Well, the 3 of us became kind of the nucleus of these hunting trips, and word got around what we were doing, and pretty soon it was, well, is it possible if I come along? How about if I come along? Well, there was another businessman here in town. He was just kind of a neighbor to me here. And he wanted to come along and hadn't had a lot of experience in horseback riding, but he said, you know, if you let me come, I'll sure enough be the camp cook. Well, you can't hardly beat that, you know. When you get back in the backcountry, you have somebody cook when you come back from hunting all day. That's just pretty nice. He did a little hunting too, but his main concern was being the camp cook. So that was pretty nice. Well, his name was Jim, and he came in a couple times, and we would come back to camp, and meals would be ready, and we'd have cakes and brownies, and he was just quite a hand at cooking around the campfire. Well, a number of years later, he and I went up to a lake called Lily Lake, and it's actually in the northern part of Wyoming on the way to Cook City. But we're in the state of Wyoming. Well, this was hunting season, and it was cold. We were probably, I don't know, maybe 0, 10 degrees in there somewhere. And he and I decided we would ride up and go hunting. Well, we had about 8 miles or so before we crossed into the Montana border, and where we were actually legal to go hunting. So we started out about 4 o'clock in the morning and rode till daylight, and we were in Montana, and so we rode past Big Moose Lake, and I think there's Reno Lake up there, and we rode all day, and there was maybe a foot of snow. And we headed kind of north and a little bit west, and pretty soon we came along Kersey Lake, and then there's an outfitter's cabin up in there that takes dudes up there in the summertime, and we hit the highway just short of Cook City, maybe about an hour before dark. We had ridden all day, and we looked back, and it was about probably 25 miles we had covered that day. Well, when we hit the highway, we were still 15 miles from our pickup and trailer and the camp. Well, this was the main highway that gets shut off in the wintertime, so occasionally there was a snowmobile that would come by because it was snowmobiles only from the junction of Chief Joseph Highway into Cook City. So we had about 15 miles of riding to go, and like I say, Jim was not attuned to or accustomed to riding horseback. We got back and it was dark, and I'm going to guess maybe 9, 10 o'clock. I don't really know that for sure in my memory. But Jim was tired. We rode probably close to 40 miles that day. And it wasn't really any big deal to me because I was accustomed to riding horses, but not so with Jim. We got back, and the next week he was moaning and groaning, and oh, he hurts, and it was fun, but boy, it hurt, and he was hobbling around, and I would give him a hard time. Well, he and I continued to do winter events. I liked to snowshoe, and he liked to cross-country ski. So we would do this just locally here. We would both shut down after work about 5:30, 6 o'clock, and go out and snowshoe and do some cross-country skiing for a couple hours at night. Well, we got this harebrained idea to go up south of Red Lodge. There's a trailhead called Lake Fork Trail. And from the actual trailhead, there is a location up there. It's called Lost Lake, and it's 5 miles from the trailhead. We thought we would take some cross-country skis out of his encouragement and go up to Lost Lake, and then another 3 miles or so above that was a lake called Black Canyon Lake. And this was middle of winter time, of course. Well, the road was barricaded a couple miles ahead of the trail, so instead of 5 miles, we were looking at 7 miles to get up to Lost Lake. So I'm on cross-country skis now as well, and Jim, he's in his element because this is what he thrives on, is cross-country skiing. So we quit work about 5:30, and we get up there at the trailhead or close to it about 6:30 to 7 in there, and we're headed up country, and it is up all the way. And he takes off into the lead like he's just born to it. And of course, you know, me now, I'm the one that's struggling. I can navigate on snowshoes. I've done a little bit of cross-country skiing, but now I am not in my element. We go for a couple miles, and he finally says, well, I'm going to go on ahead, and I'll see if I can't find us a camp spot and kind of get us ready. So he takes off, and like I say, we're who knows what now, 8, 9 o'clock at night. And he takes off, and I'd been up horseback to Lost Lake and this Black Canyon Lake and Kaiser Brown, you know, all this country up in that area, but it'd been on the back of a horse. And so I knew where I was going. So he took off anyway, and I'm just kind of plodding along, and we both got our backpacks on because we've got our sleeping bags and our gear and our fishing equipment because we're going to go fish this Black Canyon Lake. Yeah, right. Well, he finally comes back to find out where I am at. And I'm probably another mile to go yet. And so he encouraged me, you know, come on, you can make it, you can make it. Well, he had got up there and already had dug a pit in the snow that was probably 4 to 5 feet deep. We're in some snow country now, 5, 6 feet deep. By the time I got there, it was dug out, and he had a fire going and needed some more wood hauled in. And I mean to tell you, I was dog tired. It was one of those times that if I could have just curled up and gone to sleep, I'd have sure enough died that night, if it hadn't been for Jim. He had it dug out, had a fire going, and pretty soon he had supper kind of going. Of course, we were eating dehydrated. And we crawled into this snow cave, and threw a tarp over the top of us, and it's pretty comfortable if you've done any snow camping in the wintertime. You dig a hollow hole into the ground and cover it over with bough branches or a tarp or something, and you're pretty much snug as a bug in a rug. So I crashed that night, and I thought, sure enough, I am not going anywhere. Well, the next morning I actually felt pretty good. So we went and cross-country skied up to Black Canyon Lake. All we brought was an axe. We're gonna go ice fishing, right? So we started chipping a hole in the ice, and pretty soon our 2-foot hole in diameter became a 3-foot hole and a 4-foot hole and a 5-foot hole. Ended up being, the ice on this lake was 4 feet thick. And we were laying on our bellies, getting down there to the end of the hole, and he says, now when you hit that last bit, you gotta go lickety-split because it's gonna come splashing up at you. So he's holding on to my feet, and I'm down there head first into this hole, chopping the hole. And sure enough, as soon as you break that last little bit of ice, that water just comes up like an artesian well. And I'm just splashing away, trying to get that hole opened. And pretty soon, the water is up at ice level. What an experience. We fished and didn't catch a blooming thing. But you know, that whole trip, when we got back, he was turning the tables on me. I was feeling pretty tough. I was sore, I was tired, I was beat. He turned the tables on me, and I had my just reward. But when you're back at camp and the misery is over and you think back like I do now, that was really a fun trip. Jim and I had some fun times together. He's no longer around these days, and I kind of miss him sometimes. But he was an avid outdoorsman. In his element, he shined when it came to cross-country skis. When I was in my element, it was a little different deal if I was a horseback. But we got along well together and had some good times. But it was one of those times that if it hadn't been for Jim, I'd have just curled up and called her good. I think I'd have gone to sleep, and you know what that means. Well, I don't know how long I'm going to sit here in the dark, sitting by my campfire in the shop. Seems like I ought to go do something. I could go set a post at Farewell. I can maybe do a little bit at the store, but it takes power to run my air compressor. Kind of a different day. They'll get it back on eventually. You just got to wait it out. So when it does, I'll get back to my painting. And I guess this is literally a fireside chat, telling stories. Lots of memories around a campfire. Hope you've had those too. Thanks for coming along. Thanks for watching.